Hey Retro Community! Today we're going to go over Sony's PlayStation Portable, also known as the PSP. As per usual, we'll cover the history, specs, demo off a few games, and that's it. Alright, let's get started. The PSP, also known as the PSP 1000, was released in Japan on December 12, 2004, followed by a North American launch in March of 2005. PAL regions got their fix in September later that year. It was Sony's attempt to compete with Nintendo on the portable front, a domain almost exclusively dominated by Nintendo. Sony was hoping to dethrone the king and started making a dent into Nintendo's market share. It helped that besides games, it could also play music and videos, as well as connect to the internet. This was probably more important in Japan, where mobile devices are king. It also had connectivity with the PS2 and PS3, along with a store in which to purchase digital titles. By the end of its production, it sold over 80 million units. The PSP uses a landscape or horizontal form factor and contains two 333 MHz MIPS-based processors. Its GPU ran at 166 MHz and has 32 MB of RAM. This was later upgraded to 64 MB in future revisions. There was also 4 MB of RAM split between the GPU and the media engine. The display is a 4.3-inch LCD screen with a resolution of 480 by 272, capable of displaying up to 16.7 million colors. It also has built-in Wi-Fi, a mini USB Type-B port, and a Memory Stick Pro slot. Games and movies are contained on UMD Media, Sony's proprietary format, similar to that of a mini CD or DVD contained within a plastic shell. The controls are modeled after the console's controllers, except with one set of shoulder buttons instead of two, and one analog nub instead of two analog sticks. To round things off, the PSP is powered via the included 1800 mAh battery, 1200 mAh in later revisions, or via the AC adapter and charger. You could also charge it via the mini USB-B port, but you have to supply your own charger for that. The PSP received a few revisions, starting with the PSP 2000, also known as the PSP Slim in Europe, followed by the PSP 3000, the PSP Go, and the PSP Street. The 2000 and 3000 maintained the overall look of the original, whereas the PSP Go was more of a slimmed-down version featuring slide-out controls and eliminating the UMD reader, making it a digital-only device. The PSP Street was a more budget-friendly redesign of the 1000 to 3000 series. You may have noted earlier that I mentioned that the 2000 and 3000 series had a smaller capacity battery. Now it still gets the same battery life as the 1000, but due to system optimizations made by Sony, they were able to shrink down the battery. Now they did offer a larger capacity battery later on. The operating system, known as System Software, was visually similar to the OS on the PS3 and drove most of the PSP's functionality. It began as just a basic operating system, allowing the user to play games, access media, and a few other options. But over time, Sony updated it to include a web browser, PS3 connectivity for remote play, and of course, your typical stability and security patches. Similar to what Nintendo did with the Game Boy line, Sony released the PSP in various colors and themes, including black, white, silver, mint green, and metallic blue, among others. The themed releases included a Final Fantasy VII Crisis Core Edition, a Monster Hunter Freedom Edition, and a Star Wars Edition. A full list of colors and themes can be found in the sources below. Many games were released over its lifetime, almost 1,400, including sequels and prequels to many PS2 and PS1 games. One such series, Grand Theft Auto, had two prequels, Grand Theft Auto Liberty City Stories and Grand Theft Auto Vice City Stories. There was no prequel to San Andreas, unfortunately. Another major prequel, Final Fantasy VII Crisis Core, was also released and was more of an action RPG than a traditional JRPG. Other popular titles was a version of Ridge Racer for the PSP, as well as a version of Wipeout for it known as Wipeout Pure. There were also several PS1 games re-released for it that ran through emulation and were released via the digital store. One unique port, so to speak, was Final Fantasy IV, the Complete Collection. It included both the original Final Fantasy IV as well as Final Fantasy IV The After Years, with enhanced graphics and sound, although there was an option to bring back the SNES-style soundtrack. But what was unique about it is that it also had this little mini-game, an interlude, if you will, that kind of bridged the two stories together. So that's kind of neat. Of course, all of these games, plus many, many more, are what helped the PSP get to that 80 million unit install base. A few peripherals were also released as well, including AV and component video out cables so you can play on your television, although this was only compatible with the PSP 2000 and the PSP 3000. There was also a GPS accessory with map data on a UMD, and a few third-party HDMI upscalers. In more recent times, a lot more accessories have come out, including third-party HDMI adapters that are much more compact and much more affordable than the original HDMI scaler that was out, as well as a bunch of replacement shells, which is very fortunate, as you'll see later on in this video. The PSP successor, the PS Vita, allowed you to download PSP games from the PS Store and play them on the Vita. Since the Vita lacked a UMD drive, this was the only official way to play. And yes, of course, with anything else retro, there is an active modding scene available, allowing you to hack the firmware in order to load up emulators, especially PS1 games, as well as to allow you to play official digital backup copies of your actual UMD discs. Okay, so let's take a look at my PSP. I was actually really lucky when I got this, as I was able to find it brand new at Target back in, I want to say 2015 or 2016, I forget exactly when. This was well after its lifespan already. I wasn't even looking for one, I just happened to spot it on the shelf, so I picked it up. Which was cool because I really wanted to play Final Fantasy IV: The Complete Collection. Big fan of Final Fantasy IV in general, and this gave me the perfect opportunity. However, I didn't want to pay the exorbitant prices for the Memory Stick Pro, so instead I opted for an SD to MS Pro adapter. After a couple years though, the battery just stopped working and started to bulge, and by then only third-party batteries existed, so that's what I went with. The capacities on many of these third-party batteries are misleading at best and flat out a lie at worst. Nothing beats the original, unfortunately, so this is all we have. Now, there are mods available that you could perform on the original battery to replace the dead cells inside, but I really don't recommend messing with that. Too much of a fire risk, in my honest opinion. There's also another mod where you take out the UMD drive altogether, and you basically take a third-party battery, remove the cells, so you leave just the circuitry behind, and you wire up these battery cells that are now stored in the UMD drive, and supposed to give you even longer battery life than the official battery, but again, I don't recommend doing that unless you really know what you're doing, because you could start a fire or even worse. I also picked up a set of component video cables, but other than the menus, I could never get it to actually work on a television. Perhaps the video output just isn't compatible with the modern LCDs that I have in my possession. I don't have access to a CRT, so I can't test it there. Perhaps a line doubler would help. I've been thinking about picking one up anyway. There are also HDMI cables available as well, and I did pick one up, and you'll probably see that in next month's pickups video. Another gripe I have is with the paint job. As you can see, the glossy finish has started to severely chip, though to be honest, I don't mind the look of the plastic underneath. I just wish the paint would finish chipping so I could expose it. But that's where these third-party shells come into play, and I might have to pick one of those up. We'll see. So, again, here's my PSP, as well as my small but slowly growing collection of games. I have Final Fantasy IV: The Complete Collection. I also picked up both Grand Theft Auto games for it, Final Fantasy VII: Crisis Core, Ridge Racer, and last but not least, Twisted Metal. Trying to find a copy of Mega Man Powered Up, which was a remake of the original Mega Man from the NES, just using 3D visuals. There's also an enhanced soundtrack, though I think you can also choose to play with the original music as well. I don't remember. I also want to pick up a copy of Star Ocean, which was a remake of the SNES release, and I'm sure there's a bunch of others that I'll find out over time. And hell, if you have any recommendations, leave them down below in the comments section. So that about sums it up for the PSP, at least from my perspective. What do you think about the PSP and its game library? Do you have one? Do you still play it? And if so, what games do you enjoy playing? If you don't have one, do you ever plan on getting one? And if you are, why? Is there a specific game, or is it just something you've always wanted? Go ahead and leave some comments below and tell me some stories. But with that being said, if you liked the video, go ahead and hit the thumbs up, and feel free to subscribe if you haven't yet, but no obligation. And if you didn't like it, go ahead and hit the thumbs down button. It's there for a reason. But if you do hit that, please leave a comment below as to why, so I can try to use that to help improve my videos going forward. Thanks all, and I'll catch you later.